नमो तस्स भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्स नमो तस्स भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्स नमो तस्स भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्स. So today we will be continuing to study the book 8 of the Buddha and his Dhamma, and we are already studying what is called the part 2, his humanity, and in that we have been studying various dimensions of the personality of the Buddha, and today we are going to go through the subsection 4, which is titled as his tolerance for the intolerant. And the last one in this part 2 will be the study about his sense of equality and equal treatment. So we're going to look at the two subsections today. So I will begin to read it, and then we will be glossing over some of the key aspects which are relevant for us to understand. So the subpart 4 begins with the title, his tolerance of the intolerant. And we know that, the Buddha was a very tolerant sort of a personality, and he tolerated so many things, the wrong views of the people, and he was never impatient, and he dealt with every situation very calmly, patiently, and with equilibrium that we have seen. So here is a story or an episode in the life of the Buddha, which took place in the town of Aravi. So once the Blessed Lord was dwelling in the realm of Yakka Alavaka, in the town of Aravi, then the Yakka Alavaka approached the Blessed Lord, and having approached him, said thus, "Get out, O monk." So that's what the Yakka or Yaksha Alavaka told to Buddha to get out. And the Blessed Lord departed, saying, "Very well, friend." So the first time the Yakka asked the Buddha to get out, and the Buddha did it. Likewise, and the Buddha left. The Yakka then ordered, "Enter, O monk." So the second time the Yaksha asked the Buddha to enter, and Blessed Lord entered, saying, "Very well, friend." You see the choice of the world. Even when the Yakka is reapproaching the Buddha, reproaching the Buddha is very calm, and he's addressing the Yakka as the same sort of a thing, in a sense of friendly manner. So he's telling him to, as he's addressing him as a friend. For the second time also, the Yakka Alavaka told the Blessed Lord, "Get out, O monk." The Lord departed, saying, "Very well, friend." "Enter, O monk," said the Yakka the second time. The Lord entering said, saying, "Very well, friend." You see. For the third time also, the Yakka Alavaka told the Lord, "Get out, O monk." The Lord departing, saying, "Very well, friend." "Enter, O monk," said Yakka again. Now this happened for the 3 times, and as it was the custom of the Buddha, he accepted everything by 3 times. And the 4th time, when Yaksha asked the Buddha to get out, the Buddha declined. The 4th time did the Yakka tell the Lord, "Get out, O monk," and the Buddha declined. This time the Lord replied, "I shall not get out, friend. You may do what you like." You see, so here is a lesson for us. We can be very calm and quiet, and we can repeat the cycle of 3. If the things doesn't happen the way we want it 3 times, judiciously, then the 4th time we can respond to it the way the Buddha responded to the situation. So what did the Buddha say? That, "I shall not get out, friend. You may do what you like." So whatever you like, you may do, Yaksha. I am not going to get out. "I shall put a question to you, monk. If you do not answer my question, I will drive you out of your wits, and I will tear your heart, or I will take you by the feet and throw you to the other side of the river," said the angry Yaksha. So the Buddha is not complying to the Yaksha. The Yaksha has become angry, And because the Yaksha has become angry, he's threatening the Buddha that I will ask you a few questions. And if you fail to answer those questions, what I will do, I will drive you out of your wits. I will drive you crazy. I will tear your heart. I will physically harm you. And I will take you by the feet and throw you on to the other side of the river. So the angry Yakka is now threatening the Buddha for not complying to his orders or instructions. And the verse number 16 talks about the great confidence of the Buddha. I do not see friend, anyone in the world who could drive me out of my wits or tear out my heart or take me by the feet and throw me across the river. Still, friend, you may put any questions you like. See, this is the confidence of the Buddha. The Buddha says that nobody is there in the earth, on this earth, who can drive me crazy, who can drive me out of my intelligence or tear out my heart or physically harm me or take me by the feet and throw me across the river. But even then, there is nobody like that in the world. I let you have the permission to ask me the question that you want to ask. And this is how the questions of Yaksha begin. Then the Yaksha, Alavaka, asked the Lord the following questions. So these are the questions of the Alavaka, very famous questions of Alavaka. So what is the noblest wealth for a man in this world? So this is the first question of the Yaksha. What is the noblest wealth for a man in this world? What pure action brings happiness? What is the sweetest of all tests? What manner of living is said to be the noblest living? These are the 4 questions in the first phase the Yaksha put to the Buddha. The Lord replied, faith is the noblest wealth for a man in this world. So what is our greatest wealth? The greatest wealth that we can have is the faith. And I think this statement is very important because most of the times, we undermine the saddha when we tend to be more rational, we tend to undermine the shraddha. But here the Buddha is comparing the saddha or the faith with the wealth and the noblest wealth at that. So it's not a normal wealth to have the faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. And as we have seen in the last study, that to faith in one's goodness. So this sort of four comforts or 4 sort of ways by which we can have a faith is the noblest wealth. So there is no noble wealth than having the faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. Isn't it? Placing our heart onto the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. So that is Saddha or Shraddha. What pure actions brings happiness? So what is the real source of happiness? The Dhamma well observed brings happiness. So, if you want to have the real happiness, how should we have the real happiness? The Buddha says that you can have the real happiness by only observing the Dhamma. We can have the best happiness. What is the sweetest of all tests? So what is the sweetest of all the tests? Aravaka asks the Buddha, and the Buddha replies, truth is the sweetest of all tests. So, there is no true test higher than the truth, which is the truth that the Buddha taught, and as the way it is, the world it is, the Paticca Samutpada, knowing the Paticca Samutpada, knowing the essence of the Dhamma is the sweetest, is the sweetest of all the tests. What manner of living is said to be the noblest living? The living endowed with wisdom is said to be the noblest thing. You see, so the 4 questions of Alavaka Yaksha, who is very angry because the Buddha is not complying to him. The Buddha is saying that do whatever you like, and I'm not somebody who's going to refuse to answer your question. Please go on answering your question, asking your questions. And Yaksha asked him the 4 questions, whose answers we have seen. And this is the format that we see in all the Buddhist scriptures and the text, where the questions are asked to the Buddha, and the Buddha answers the questions. And this format of questioning and answering is very important for us to understand. So what is the noblest wealth for a man in this world? The one single answer is the faith, the Saddha. What pure actions brings happiness? The Dhamma well observed brings happiness. What is the sweetest of all tests? Truth is the sweetest of all tests. What manner of living is said to be the noblest living? The living endowed with wisdom. Pradnya is said to be the noblest thing. Then Yaksha Alavaka asked, how does one cross the flood? And in bracket, there is a river. Means reoccurring, and how to break the habit pattern that we are all caught up into, isn't it? How does one cross the sea of existence? How does one overcome suffering? So these are the additional three questions that the Yaksha asked the Buddha. And the Buddha replied, one crosses the flood by faith. Saddha tarati yogo, as we know in Dhammapad. So with faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha, we can cross the flood. And one crosses the sea by vigilance, by virya, by awareness, by mindfulness, by appamada. One crosses the sea. And one overcomes suffering by exertion, by making efforts. We can overcome the suffering. So we need to have faith, we need to have apramad or mindfulness or sati, and we should have virya or exertion, and we purify the heart by wisdom. So whenever the wisdom is arisen in us, we can purify ourselves. So this was the second set of the questions that Alavaka asked to the Buddha. And the third set of the questions that Yaksha Alavaka asked to the Buddha: how does one acquire knowledge? How does one obtain wealth? How does one attain fame? How does one gain friends? Passing from this world to the other world up to date, how does one not repent? So this is the third set of questions that the Yaksha Alavaka asked. So the Lord replied, having faith in the Arhats and in the Dhamma for the attainment of Nibbana, and by obedience, the diligent, attentive person acquires wisdom. So how do we acquire wisdom? Having faith in the Arhats and in the Dhamma for the attainment of Nibbana. So if you want to attain the Nibbana, we should have the faith that it's possible to attain the Nibbana by looking at the Arhats, and have the faith within Dhamma. So you see, in all the three sets of questions, the Saddha has been appearing all the time. And in the Buddha Dhamma, Saddha is very important. And in the life of Baba Ambedkar, we see that Saddha in the Buddha emerging all the time. A lot of people have experienced Baba says deep and very solid Shraddha in the Buddha that has been encountered all the time by a lot of people whenever they had an opportunity to know Baba Sahib's faith in the Buddha. And there are several occasions in which the faith was demonstrated. So one who does what is proper. So what is proper? If we do it, what is proper? One who is resolute and one who is awake, he acquires wealth. So if we want to acquire wealth, we should be doing what is proper. One should be resolute, never give up. We should not give up anything, on some ventures which we are into. We should be vigilant, awake, and such a person acquires wealth. And it's very important. How do we acquire friends? So we acquire the friends by sharing, by giving dana, by sharing our confidence, by sharing our material possessions, by sharing our knowledge, by sharing whatever Dhamma we know, we acquire friends. And this is how we acquire wealth, by working hard, by doing what is important, by never giving up. This is the way we acquire wealth, and by sharing, we acquire friends. And the faithful householder in whom truthfulness, righteousness, patience, and generosity are found, he does not repent after death. Isn't it? So the person doesn't have any regret, no repentance, because they have done what was to be done, because they had acted in a truthful way, they have acted in a righteous way, they have acted patiently and generously to others, and therefore they do not repent after death. So come on, also consult other numerous monks and Brahmins, whether there are any other qualities higher than truth, self-control, charity, and patience. So the Buddha says to Yaksha, you go and talk to anybody and ask them, are there any other qualities higher than truth, higher than self-control, charity, and patience? So Yaksha Alavaka says, now why should I consult various Brahmins and the monks? Today I know the prosperity which belongs to my future good. So this is what the Alavaka Yaksha replies to the Buddha, that I don't need to go to anybody, because he taught me what was to be taught, because I know now the prosperity which belongs to my future good. Indeed, the Buddha came to the dwelling of Alavi for my benefit. Today I know to whom when given, it returns the greatest fruit. Beautiful, isn't it? This phrase, today I know to whom when given, it returns the greatest fruit. isn't it? Because the Buddha has come to all for my benefit. He has not come for himself. He has come for us. He has come for the people. He has come for the Bhujan Hitai, Bhujan Sukhai. He has come to create a better society. He has come for the good of all, betterment of all. And therefore, he knows that today I know to whom when given, it returns the greatest fruit. From today, I will wander from village to village, from town to town, paying my respect to the fully enlightened one and his perfect doctrine, his Sadham. So this was ultimate conversion of the Aksha Alavi, uh, Alavaka from Adavi. And this is a very important sort of a sutta which is available in an extended form in the scriptures. But suffice here is to say that the Buddha was very tolerant. He was not intolerant. When Yaksha insulted the Buddha 3 times, and he asked the Buddha to go and come 3 times. The Buddha didn't, didn't become angry, and the Buddha answered the question of a man who was hostile to him, or the Yaksha who was hostile to the Buddha. So you can see this quality of the Buddha, that never give up and never be angered by anyone. Even to practice the highest tolerance. The people abuse us or people talk bad about us, and so many things go on in the world. Like the Buddha says that 8 loka dhamma, futtassa loka dhamme chintang yasana kampati, asokam virajam kemum etang mahamangala, mahamangala muttama. So this is the highest blessing if we do not become angered by people heaping anger on us, by people talking bad about us, people backbiting us, isn't it? So there are so many lessons here in the subsection 4, and I will now move on to the subsection 5, which is the last subsection of the part 2, and I'm going to read it through and through, and then we will be discussing what is, we will open up the class for any discussion or any insights that might occur to any one of you. So his sense of equality and equal treatment, isn't it? So the Buddha had a sense of equality. It is called the radical equality. The Buddha was, a firm believer in equality. And this is how we are going to see. There are many examples in the life of the Buddha where we can see, and we have seen in the past classes as to how the Buddha was a person who believed in the equality, radical equality between not only man and man, but also man and women and whatnot. The Buddha went deeper into the cultivation of what can be called the practice of equality. So whatever rules the Blessed Lord had made for the members of the Sangha were voluntary and willingly accepted by him to be binding on him also. You see, the first sentence itself is very profound. So the Buddha made certain rules for the Sangha, and they were voluntarily, they were not mandatory. And, the Buddha didn't force anyone to accept the rules of Vinaya. He said that these are the rules or the practices for the best conduct. And, you can voluntarily accept him, but he didn't just ask them to follow them, but the Buddha himself was bound by those rules. And this is very significant. Some of the teachers that they say that the rules are for you, they are not for me. I have gone beyond them, isn't it? And we see this time and again in the world that the rules are flouted. The rules are for you, they are not for me, isn't it? So the Buddha was a teacher par excellence who had certain rules for the community or the members of the Sangha, which were voluntarily, and they had to accept them willingly, not by force. And the same rules were binding on the Buddha himself. That's the first point. The second, he never claimed any exemption or any special treatment on the ground that he was the acknowledged head of the fraternity, and to whom any concession would have been most willingly made by the fraternity out of the boundless love and respect they bore for him. So the Buddha was so beloved or so loved by the monks and the nuns that, they could easily afford him the special privilege or the special treatment. And we know that the Buddha did his own, daily routine himself, like washing himself, washing his own utensils, washing his own clothes, arranging seat for himself, going for the begging round himself, isn't it? He was the person who went for his own rounds of begging, every day, day after day, till he died, isn't it? The Buddha was somebody who never let other people to be responsible for him, isn't it? He did all his work himself. And Buddha was such a great man. We would surrender everything to the Buddha as we do, and we are willing to do anything for the Buddha. Imagine the physical Buddha, the Siddhartha Gautama himself, the historical Buddha. If we encounter the Buddha, we would be able to offer him everything, all our wealth. If we have that much Saddha, we will give up everything for the Buddha, isn't it? But the Buddha won't accept that. That's the beauty of the Buddha. You compare the Buddha with the gurus and the teacher of the today. They demand so much from him. They demand special platform. They demand special clause. They demand special treatment. They demand special sort of the privileges, but not the Buddha. And this is what makes the Buddha very significant. So he never claimed any exemption or any special treatment on the ground that he was the acknowledged head of the fraternity, and to whom any concession would have been most willingly made by the fraternity out of the boundless love and respect they bore for him. The rule that the members of the Sangha could take only one meal a day was accepted and followed by the Blessed Lord as much as it was by the Bhikkhu. The rule that the members of the Sangha should have no private property was accepted and followed by the Blessed Lord as much as it was by the Bhikkhu. The rule that no member of the Sangha should have more than 3 pieces of cloth was accepted and followed by the Blessed Lord as much as it was by the Bhikshu. Once, when the Lord was living in the Sakyan country at Kapilavastu in the Banyan Grove, Mahaprajapati Gautami, the mother of the Blessed Lord, came to the Lord with 2 new lengths of cloth, which she begged the Lord to be so good as to accept from her, as it was the work of her own hands at the loom expressly for him. So you see, when the Buddha was staying in Kapilavastu, his mother, Mahaprajapati, with her own hands, she produced these 2 new lengths of cloths. And we know that it's a hard work that time to produce the cloth, to make the cloths. And the Buddha, the Buddha's mother did it for the Buddha, and she was begging the Lord to accept it. And she was repeatedly doing it. So the Buddha has told her. To her, the Lord made the answer, give it to the co-fraternity. She said, give it to the Sangha, don't give it to me. It doesn't belong to me. I cannot own anything private. Even if it is given by my beloved mother, I cannot accept it for myself. So he said, give it to the co-fraternity. A second and the third time, Gautami repeated a request only to receive the same reply 3 times. Then Ananda intervened, saying, pray, accept, sir, the clause presented by Gautami. So you see, Ananda is like a good man, always there. Whenever there is any crisis, he is always there to, intervene, because he is very close to the Buddha. He is a beloved of the Buddha. He's like a son to the Buddha. He's looking after the Buddha, tending the Buddha. And, he always comes in between, like whenever there are times of crisis. And here happens the same thing, after not accepting the robe that Mahaprajapati prepared with her own hands. And the Buddha said, give it to the fraternity. The Buddha said that, I don't want it, go give it to the fraternity, because that's the sense of equality that the Buddha had. He didn't want anything for himself. He didn't want anything to do with himself, just give it to the Sangha, whatever there is. Then Ananda intervened, saying, pray, accept, sir, the cloth presented by Gautami. She was of great service to the Lord as nurse and foster mother, suckling her nephew when his own mother died. So the Ananda's job is to remind the Buddha what had happened in the past. So saying that, you suckled her, you drank her milk, she looked after you when your mother died, and she was like mother to you, she was like a nurse to you. So please accept. But the Blessed Lord insisted upon the cloth being given to the co-fraternity. The Buddha was unmoved. The Buddha didn't move. The Buddha was unshakable. The Buddha could not be shaken. So he said, no, I don't want to accept it. You give it to the Sangha, the co-fraternity. Originally, it was the rule of the Sangha that the robes of the members should be made of rags picked up from the dung heaps. So you see, there was a tradition in India at the time of the Buddha. The cloths were a rarity. You cannot, just like, we have a mass production of the cloths. That time, getting the cloths was not easy. So what is called the pansukul, the cloths thrown in the dust. So, for example, on the dead bodies, when the dead bodies were dispersed or disposed, they were cloths on the dead bodies. And, just like we see some of the cloths thrown in the dust. So the Buddha advised that, the monks can have them and they can stitch them into a bigger cloth. So you have a small patches of the cloth, then you sieve it. The practice is even practiced. This practice is even practiced today in Japanese Zen tradition, where the monks who are going to be ordained, they sew their own chivers, their own pansukul chiver, their own robe. And now it has gone into a sophistication. You don't have to go and find the cloths from the rags and pick up the rags and thrown in the dust. But that was a tradition, and you see, it looked very beautiful. The chiver made up of these so many different cloths, and it resembled very beautiful. In a sense, it said that it reminded of the rice fields. You see, if you see the rice field from the top, you see different squares and of different shapes. So that time the chiver looked like that. It looked very beautiful, I think, to my eyes, in the imagination of my eyes. It looked very beautiful. The cloths, the chiver made up of the thrown away or the rags picked up from the dung heaps, stitched into a chiver. So this rule was made to prevent the wealthier classes from joining the Sangha. So if you are from a richest classes, you should throw up your privileges, isn't it? You cannot join the Buddhist Sangha by, having some special privileges or special clause for himself or for yourself. Just you become equal with everybody, isn't it? It said that, the chiver makes the bhikshu and bhikshuni so equal that, if you look at them from a distance, they look like, you cannot know whether they are man or women, isn't it? So that's the kind of a radical equality even the robes of the bhikshu promoted. And I think that's a very important point. So originally it was the rule of the Sangha that the robes of the members should be made of rags picked from the dung heaps. This rule was made to prevent the wealthier classes from joining the Sangha and bring their privileges. If you are joining the Sangha, you are not rich or poor, you are not high-born or low-born, you are not black or white, you are not man or women, you are not privileged in any way. The only thing is the year of your ordination, isn't it? That if somebody is a senior by way of their ordination, they were supposed to be respected. That's it, nothing else. And even as we have seen and in the Buddha Dhamma, so even when you are a teacher of somebody, if your student is sick, you are supposed to take care of them, isn't it? So you see the sense of hierarchy in Buddhism is functional. It has nothing to do with watertight compartments. That these people are greater than these people, this set of people are greater than this set of people. It's not like that, isn't it? Whatever hierarchy we see in the Buddhist Sangha is a functional one. It has nothing. It is not the essential one, isn't it? It's not watertight. It's not a caste system, isn't it? So once Jivika prevailed upon the Blessed Lord to accept a robe of a newly made cloth. When the Lord accepted it, he at the same time realized the original rule and allowed the bhikshu the same privilege. So once Jivaka offered the Buddha a chivara and the Buddha accepted it, and once the Buddha accepted it, he made it for all. He made that rule for all that they are free to accept. So the point here that we are trying to get it at in this two subsection is the Buddha's, the sense of tolerance. He was never angered by the intolerant people, and he accepted the situation wherein the people were intolerant to him in a dignified way, and after a certain time he responded, isn't it? And 3 times, and he responded as a teacher, and there is a huge amount of material which shows in that how we should be responding to the situations which are hostile, how we should be dealing with the intolerant people, and how we should have the sense of equality and equal treatment. So with this, we finish the part 2 of the book 8 of the Buddha and his Dhamma, and as you have seen in the part 2 of the Buddha and his Dhamma, there is such a rich teachings available to us. The teachings such as how to deal with disease, dying, death, how to give primacy to the cultivation of mind, and all those issues that we face on day-to-day basis. And we can see the way Baba Sahib Ambedkar has arranged the material, the teachings of the Buddha in the Buddhism is very unique and special in a way that it's like uh, we can approach the Buddhism from many doors, isn't it? And from many gates, and it's we can liken the Buddhism with a palace with many doors, and wherever we enter, we get a very deep sense and a feeling for the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha, and how we can bring that in our day-to-day lives, in our lives. So I think this part 2 of the book 8 of the Buddhism is very important, and it brings us in terms of our faith in the Buddha very closer to the Buddha, historical Buddha himself. So I will stop here and open up the class for any reflection or any discussion. Okay, if there is anything on anybody's mind, anybody would like to share anything, kindly please do so.
Jai Bhim, sir.
Jai Bhim, Shashank.
Yes. So in verse number 20, in his tolerance of the intolerant, part. So I'm just reading the verse number 20 and 21. That sounds so beautiful.
Please
that
do.
Yakka Alavaka asks that how does one cross the flood? How does one cross the sea? How does one overcome suffering? And then the Lord replied, one crosses the flood by faith. One crosses the sea by vigilance. One overcomes suffering by exertion. One purifies oneself by wisdom. So these lines are so beautiful that this flood is nothing but a sufferings. This flood is nothing but a challenges we faced on day-to-day basis. This flood is nothing but sickness we face sometimes. And then we always get overpowered by sickness, overpowered by challenges and tough situations. And this tough situation or this, I can say, challenging situations can be definitely overcome by faith. The faith in the Buddha, the faith in the qualities of the Buddha, because I think definitely one can definitely imagine that, whenever we face suffering, whenever we face any challenges, we can imagine how Buddha will overcome the suffering, because we have the seeds of Buddha in our own mind, and how he is to destroy all those challenges, how he is to overcome all those sufferings, and then reciting those qualities, again reflecting those qualities in our day-to-day life, because those qualities are so powerful when we recite those, like Buddhanusati. I find it so powerful whenever I do that recitation. And then there is always a faith, and then faith that we have the potential to overcome all the suffering. We have the potential to face the challenges, and then definitely we can cross the sea to other part of the sea, to be more vigilant, to be more faithful towards the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. So this is my reflection. Thank you.
Fascinating. Very well said.
Yes, sir. Rahul here.
Yeah, Rahul, please.
Yeah, this is the second gatha from the Jai Mangala Gatha. And as it is said by Mr. Shashank that we should day-to-day reflecting. So this Jai Mangala Gatha at the end also said that Etapi Buddha Jai Mangala Gatha Yo Vachake Dina Dine Smaranti. Means whoever daily remember this one, he will reach to this enlightenment or achieve the peace.
Yeah.
So means this Jai Mangal Attagatha, what you usually practice in the all ceremonies, the Buddhist ceremonies. So this has very good meaning. So one of the gatha we studied. So that
very good.
So I wanted to say that we have a very profound things, profound gathas we recite, and we just rather than reciting, we can remember the name. Remember the meaning of that things, and that really helpful to us.
Yeah, yeah.
That's it.
I agree with you, because you see this placing the heart into the Buddha is a very important practice in many traditions. In Korean tradition, there is a Zen tradition where it's taught to surrender your mind from moment to moment to the Buddha, and I find it very fascinating to surrender, to be aware that every thought is dedicated to the Buddha, every action is dedicated to the Buddha, every word is dedicated to the Buddha, surrender to the Buddha. And the whatever we recite at the beginning of the class, or any Buddhist assemblies, Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. So very powerful, mighty words. Namo means placing, namati, bend towards, and from that word comes namaste and namaskar, bending yourself towards other, isn't it? So Namo and Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa, very sacred sort of to use the word common use like mantra, isn't it? Bending our mind all the time towards the Buddha. But here in this beautiful Pali rendering, Tassa means to him, how he is. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. It's very beautiful. So and in some tradition, when you go to the very faith-oriented Buddhist traditions, like Pure Land Buddhism, which is said to have originated from the Maharashtra. The monk Purna is said to have such a devotion towards the Buddha, and the very concept of what is called the Amitabha Buddha. And Amitabha, which means infinite light, which indicates the boundless wisdom of the Buddha, the spotless, radiant mind of the Buddha. And Amitayu, the infinite web of life that is there. And the Buddha is the embodiment, or in the human form, the embodiment of that boundless wisdom and boundless compassion. And we all are having that. The latter Buddhist traditions have been very emphatic in telling us that the Buddha is in your body, isn't it? There is no Buddha outside there, and which means that we have to awaken our Buddha within, which means that we have to surrender to what is the best within us, which is the infinite light and life, isn't it? So in the Pure Land tradition, they have this sacred chanting, in a sense of placing your heart in the infinite boundless wisdom and the compassion of the Buddha, Namo Amitabha Buddha. So when you do that, you don't surrender yourself, you just acknowledge, you just be grateful to the life and the light, isn't it? And you express that gratitude to the Buddha all the time, moment to moment, isn't it? And it is said that when we are dying, if we can place our heart fully onto these qualities which are within us, we as the Buddhist taught, the Buddha within you. And if we can make efforts, we can awaken the Buddha within us. And so I particularly find the approach of faith very, very important, isn't it? And I think that remembering the Buddha, thinking about the Buddha, thinking about Baba Sahib, reading about his life, it has certain qualities, to make our lives better, isn't it? Because we have the living embodiments or examples of how we should be living our lives, So some of the traditions is that because the Buddha has already awakened the world, we don't have to make that much efforts, because the Buddha was the first who had to discover the Buddha within, isn't it? And once he has done, he has given us the cues or the pathways or the instructions or the complete procedure as to how we can awaken that boundlessness within us, isn't it? So I think it's very beautiful what both Shashank and Rahul has said. Very beautiful to remember the Buddha, to think about the qualities of the Buddha. I think reading the biography of the Buddha itself is a practice that we can undertake. Reading the Buddha and his Dhamma itself is your reflection of your faith.
Yeah, really. And I think this is the first answer given by the Buddha in this same Gatha.
Hmm.
The faith, the Shraddha.
Yeah.
Answer to the Avalaka, the first answer,
Yes.
question Avalaka asked. Yeah.
Very rightly said. Yes. Alkatai.
Section 5, verse 11.
Hmm.
Dr. Buddha used to just Buddha used to change his rules time to time whenever required.
Hmm.
So, when Rahul was admitted in the Sangha at the age of 7 years, King Shuddhodhan became very sad.
Hmm.
So, Buddha changed the rule and asked the permission of the parents before admitting the children in the Sangha.
Right. Yes. All right. If there are anything going on in your mind, you want to reflect or not. If not, then we will end the class today and we will meet up next week for equally fascinating teachings of the Buddha as Baba Ambedkar has taught us here. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so.
Thank you so much. Jai Bhim.
Jai Bhim.